They took the 3 children to the car. The 3 of them naturally sat in the back seat. Serena sat in the co-pilot, and Jake was driving. Serena opened the yogurt. Julianne saw it in the back and shouted, "Mom, I want it." Serena took a sip. Hearing her daughter say that, she handed the yogurt to the back. But before she handed it over, Jake stopped her and said seriously,
"Julianne, your mother didn't eat breakfast, so you can't take the yogurt from her. She would feel sick if she's hungry."
"Oh," Julianne answered, looking at the rearview mirror. She licked the lollipop in her hand and handed it over. "Mom, do you want a lollipop?" Serena chuckled and shook her head. No, Julianne could have it herself. Jeremy and Seth were holding a model in their hands. Facing each other, the 2 little guys were taking it apart, so busy that they didn't have time to eat the lollipops in their hands. The sea in Austin was on the edge of the suburbs. It took more than an hour for them to drive. This was the only sea in Austin and was always crowded. However, because it was a tourist attraction managed by state-owned enterprises, it was divided into VIP areas and ordinary areas. In the VIP area, there were obviously much less people and the beach was cleaner. Today's sun was not that strong and the sky was a bit cloudy, but it was still hot. The sea breeze was salty and the cool vapor was so enjoyable the little guys were getting excited. As soon as they walked in, the 2 boys put their models away in their backpacks. Giving their backpacks to Serena, they ran to the water in excitement. Julianne couldn't catch up with 2 brothers, so she sat on the beach, pouting and screaming in the back. "Mom, brothers don't want to play with me." "Get up. Mom will play with you." Serena took Julianne's hand and saw how the 2 boys wanted to get close to the water excitedly, but did not dare to approach. She smiled and shouted, "Seth, Jeremy, take off your shoes first. Don't get your shoes wet." "Yeah." Seth took his shoes off and placed them neatly on the side. Jeremy did the same, putting his blue shoes next to Seth's yellow shoes, and they ran towards the water with bare feet. As the seawater rose and retreated, Jeremy and Seth laughed and chased the waves. When the water level rose, they immediately screamed and ran to the side. Julianne saw that and was eager to try. She broke free from Serena's hand, ran over there, and took off the pink shoes on her feet. Following her brother, she called, "Brother!" Jeremy was enjoying himself and ignored her. Julianne snorted and ran after them. Chased by the waves, she was much slower than her brothers, and her little feet were wet immediately. Jeremy ridiculed, "Julianne, idiot! Running too slow!" Julianne was upset and ran to Seth, shouting, "Brother Seth, I want to play with you. We will ignore my brother." Seth smiled and ran towards Julianne, holding her hand and shouting, "We don't play with Jeremy." The 2 little guys held hands and ran around the beach, chasing the waves, screaming and running away. Jeremy was not happy. He ran over and took the other hand of Julianne and said, "3 people will run faster." Serena looked from afar, and the smile on her face had already widened. With an arm placed on her waist, she heard a low voice purring in her ear.
"When did you adopt the kid?"
Serena looked at the children without turning back, put her hand on his and said, "The year before last year." She paused and looked up at his face. "You don't like him? Seth is actually a good boy. Not at all like Lila." Whether his look or temperament, he did not take after Lila. Children needed to be taught. The character was not often inherited. Serena always believed that people are kind at the beginning. Facts had proved that Serena did a good job with Seth. When he was just picked up from the orphanage, Seth was very afraid of strangers and introverted. He did not dare to go out to play. He always stayed alone. At that time, Jeremy and Julianne were learning to speak, calling him brother. Followed by the 2 little kids, Seth became more and more cheerful and lively. He was also very intelligent. Jake chuckled, holding her.
"He is a great kid. You've taught him well."
"Lila is very hateful, but the child is innocent." Serena looked at him. "When the director of the orphanage called me, I was working overtime at the company. At that time, Seth had a fever for several days. He took him to see a doctor. The doctor said it was the flu. At that time, the orphanage was short in supply. Many children were infected, but Seth's condition was the most serious. The director hoped that I could help those children. After that, he was somewhat dependent on me, so I simply adopted him and took him in our household registry. She reached up and took his hand. Serena looked up at him and said, "I knew that you would come back. When I proposed to adopt him, you disagreed. I was afraid that you couldn't accept him, so I asked him to call me Auntie instead of Mother." Jake heard that and deliberately put on a stern face.
"Stupid girl. You did it without my permission."
"You were nowhere to be found at the time, so I couldn't. This child had such a horrible time. At that time, apart from me, he would not listen to anyone. He also refused to eat and play with children, so
It doesn't matter. As long as we teach him well and don't let him grow into an ungrateful person."
Jake released her and whispered,
"I'm going to prepare something. There's a grill over there. Take the kids to make some barbecue later."
"Okay, go." Jake was a bit reluctant to leave, kissed her, and walked toward the grill. Serena checked around, blushing. Then she took off her shoes and walked in the direction of the children. Seth took Julianne to pile up the sand. Having finished her candy, Julianne used the stick of the lollipop to poke the sand. After the sand was dug up, Seth put the sand up, and Jeremy was looking for shells and adding them to the sandcastle. "Ah, crab!" Jeremy yelled, holding a finger-sized thing in his hand and shouting with excitement. "Seth, Julianne, look, there's a crab! It's alive!" He ran up barefooted and threw the little crab in the middle of the pile of shells. Seth looked at him and reached out to pinch the little thing, handing it to Julianne. The little girl looked at it with excitement, but when it was in front of her, she immediately escaped and laughed loudly. "It's really alive! So small. Take it home and eat it."